Howdy Tabletop RPG fans, thank you for supporting this channel. I'm Wrangleme, Grand Poobah of Game Design, and this Reviews Day topic is the top 5 dungeon generator websites for RPGs. Last week I covered the top 5 city generator websites for RPGs. This week I will cover the top 5 dungeon generator websites for RPGs. There are many alternative dungeon generators out there. These are the 5 that I enjoy most. There are many other random generator sites on the web. This is not an exhaustive list. Dungeon Channel is a wonderful resource for a lot of tabletop RPG content and links to useful tools and tips. They host the Dungeon Gen web app, which has many parameters and generates a random dungeon map useful for improvisational prep when the game master's plan goes right and the player characters turn left. It is bare-bones map material with no embellishments or encounters. Patreon supporters gain access to Roll20 dynamic lighting settings. This is Dungeon Generator from the Dungeon Channel, and it does have the ability for a seed value. If you put in a seed, it'll use that to generate the dungeon, so you can repeat that dungeon over and over again. It has themes, including the original, ice, stylized gray, paper white, stylized white, classic blue, virtual world, and mask for image editors, which is a pretty detailed mode. You can generate dungeons from huge, large, medium, small, tiny, and mini dungeons. You can pick the regular 70 pixels per square mode, and if you're a paying patron, you can go to 140 pixels. If you are a paying patron, you can also enable dynamic lighting. You can make multi-level dungeons that have stairwells between levels and special rooms that are unique locations that are different from the standard rectangular rooms. So if I'm going to say, let's do a seed for an original, and I'm going to pick a tiny. And I'm going to say I don't want any special rooms or multi-level, just give me the dungeon. Generate. And here is a perfectly acceptable dungeon that shows an entrance, a side room, stairwells leading down into a chamber below. If I generate that again, here's my new dungeon with a pattern, a symmetrical pattern for the main chambers, some side chambers, and a big circular room with probably something dangerous hiding in it. So it's very easy to continue generating rooms. If I click multi-level, I can show that there's stairwells that connect things. It'll still put stairwells in, but it would be a normal stairwell, even on a non-multi-level as part of the entrance. If I say special rooms and generate, it will pick rooms that are slightly different than the regular generated rooms. Maybe I need to pick a bigger dungeon. Let's pick a huge generator room, and here is a much bigger dungeon. Alright, so this has got rooms like floating block rooms and giant chambers with pillars in the middle and diagonal corridor rooms and quite a few special rooms. Looks like one with a giant pool in the middle. So all of these can be saved. You just save them as an image and use it in any of your virtual tabletop software or for whatever other purposes that you need. Gozzy's random map generator site includes dungeons, caves, and wilderness battle maps. I particularly like the variety of options for backgrounds, tile sets, and map options, all on an easy-to-use settings page. The results are easy enough to use in your favorite virtual tabletop software like Roll20 and even Owlbear Rodeo. There are actual settings for 2 kinds of map generating algorithms, wandering line and random room style, with different results. So next is Gozzy's the Random Dungeon Map Creator. And it has two styles, the Wandering Line style and the Random Room style map generators. You can pick densities for all of these. You can pick maximum room size. You can do things like in the case of the random room style, you can have classic regular rooms or ruins, which will have a lot of debris in it. In the wandering line style, you can pick a number of background colors and settings that will pick the different maps that it gets rendered to, and then which tile sets it's using. So you could pick a sand script looking scroll and then ice tiles and create a map, and it's going to generate a map that looks like this. And you get ads for other websites. Very useful tool for generating these kinds of maps. And if I go back and I say that I'd like to pick a different tile set, like the green background and maybe a black tiles, and create that map, I get the green and the slate looking black tiles. If I choose the random dungeon room and pick, let's say, the same orange background and pick classic, when I hit generate, I now get a much different looking tile set and very different looking style rooms. And if I pick like a common white background and choose to use ruins, you can see I get some cavern areas, I get collapsed floors and ceilings and different kinds of patterns of rubble. So this is a very good map generator. It uses two different styles and generates two different kinds of dungeons. There is no repeating or saving your work. Remember that. Whatever you're going to do, you need to say create it and then save it as an image. I've previously mentioned Watabou's popularity and amazing generators. This one is an awesome dungeon generator. It has many options and modes to adjust the style to your particular taste. The notes mode with callouts or legend is superb, and the notes can be edited. I find its algorithm to be realistic, and the settings allow for a variety of stylistic effects. You can save the maps as PNG with notes and title, export a transparent PNG for your virtual tabletop software, or export the raw JSON data files that can be used in other apps. There is something about this style and the focus on the one-page dungeon that I prefer over the other dungeon generators. Your mileage may vary. The one-page dungeon generator from Watabou is, again, one of my favorites, and it's awesome because it has these incredible features about whether it lays out the map in a diagonal like this or aligned, whether it has callouts or not callouts. So let's say that I want to change the notes mode to off. It removes the notes. If I say the notes mode goes on, but I want it in the legend, the notes are now put to the side with numbers showing the map. If I say that I want to have the default, there's no callouts, but it clearly shows the numbers and the numbers in the map for each of these settings. This is shown on itch.io, so there's a little overlap here. But if I right click and say save as ping, it'll save the entire dungeon with its notes and all of the names and settings and everything that's been generated. If I say export as ping, it'll just export this map for use in a virtual tabletop. And I say if export as JSON, there are tools out there that will load this data and try and show it as an image or use it and process it in some other application. So this is one of the tools that I enjoy using. It has a whole style system. I can go through and change the colors, so I can change it to actually look like a colored map instead of a, 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 I can change the stroke lines, the hatching, text style, what fonts are being used. There's just a ton of information that I can set off. If I don't want secret rooms or I don't want to rotate it to fit, it'll automatically line it on a straight grid. If I go back to saying that I want the tailed notes, then it removes the numbers and just points at the rooms. Like I said, this is one of the best. Watabou is very gracious in that they allow all of their stuff to be used in commercial RPG adventures as well. So if you like your dungeon and you're happy with the settings and the generation, you can save the entire thing off and then use that in the layout of your commercial projects. D20srd.org is an incredible website with a vast collection of content for Dungeons & Dragons 3.5, 5th edition, Pathfinder, and Fantasy Name Generator. You could spend weeks or months reading the SRD reference and still more time using the amazing tools for every game. One of these tools is the Random Dungeon Generator and includes a comprehensive breakdown of the details of the dungeon, wandering monster tables, descriptions of each room, and various traps and encounters you will find there. Even with procedural generation, these are some very impressive dungeon maps, with plenty of challenges for any group of player characters to find while exploring. From d20srd.org, it has a whole thing here. You can name the dungeon. You can set which level of the dungeon you're going to generate from 1 to 20. You can pick a motif from abandoned to cold to fire. You can pick a random seed, so it does have the idea of starting off with a certain seed value, and then you can replicate that as long as you pick similar settings. The map style, graph paper to exotic, and just a huge collection, steampunk. And so if I pick generate, here is this beautiful dungeon, very detailed, lots of mazes in this one, lots of dead ends and pieces. But here's the benefit of this generator. It's not only giving you everything about how cold it is and what the floor is made of and the walls are made of, the illumination, but then it's giving you descriptions of every corridor and how that is constructed, a wandering monster table of 1d6 kinds of creatures that you can encounter if you just are wandering around, and then a full descriptions of every room, including what's in it, how the entrances work, whether you have to beat down the door or use your strength or you pick a lock. And that's for every single room in this massive dungeon. And it is so detailed and so complete, and has hyperlinks that this entrance leads to this room, and so you can just click right on it and get right to the next thing. This is awesome in terms of how much detail is provided. And I'm sure that this one is also part of the reason why people are able to randomly come up with a very complete mega dungeon crawl, is because this one does all the hard work for you. I've previously mentioned the amazing random generators by Donjon. They also have Random Dungeon Generator for many RPG systems: Generic Fantasy, AD&D, D20 Fantasy, Microlight 20, Pathfinder, D&D 4th edition, and D&D 5th edition. Each of these system choices affect the encounters by adjusting the stats, skills, abilities, and types of encounters. I consider this one of the prized features of one of the most impressive RPG resources on the web. The map is carefully labeled with generated title, legend, descriptions, wandering monsters, and detailed room descriptions and encounters with skill challenges. All the procedural information is generated based on one random number seed value. Copy that, and you can regenerate any dungeon you like when you need it again. Remember, you need to pick similar settings to see exactly the same dungeon. No tiny dungeon to medium dungeon without differences. While you don't have as much control over the physical look of these dungeon maps, you will appreciate all the effort put into the details. Very similar to the D20 SRD is the Donjon 5e random dungeon generator. If you look over here, they have a random dungeon generator for generic fantasy, a random dungeon generator for AD&D, a random dungeon generator for D20 fantasy, so anything that's old school D&D 3.0 or 3.5, even Pathfinder. Microlight 20 dungeon generator, Pathfinder dungeon generator, 4e dungeon generator, and 5e dungeon generator. So they're very complete here. They have more generators for other systems, but of course not the dungeon generator for those systems. So if we look at the things here, it's very similar, probably done in conjunction with the guys at d20srd.org. And when we hit generate, it takes a little while, but it maps the whole dungeon. Here's the dungeon again, a giant mega dungeon with a legend, with all the details of the general part of the dungeon, all the corridor features for all the corridors, the wandering monster table again, and all of the room data with hyperlinks. And so this is very similar to the D20 SRD, but the thing that this does do is adapt all of those encounters and all of the stuff for the rule system that it's targeting. So if you happen to be playing Pathfinder instead of D&D and you want all of your encounters to match, this one will adapt while it's generating. So very complete, very good. It's amazing how much content gets generated here. Sometimes I've just used this to generate random rooms, save them off, and then adapt that to another room that I use later in another map. And so I've been very pleased with both the D20 SRD generator and any of these Donjon versions. So while Watabou is my favorite dungeon generator tool for my purposes, I've used the others from time to time for various purposes. Not every tool will be useful in the same way for every game master. You should try these tools and see if you like the features before using them at your table. Many of these web tools have no way to save data for later editing. You can always make screenshots, save images, or print PDFs. Donjon does allow you to regenerate a dungeon based on the same seed. If you have the need to work, edit, and save your dungeon maps instead of just generate them, I suggest looking for downloadable software that allows you to make your own dungeons in software for desktop computers. I use Dungeon Draft, which also happens to have a random dungeon mode if you want it. Please be sure to recommend any of your favorite tabletop RPG tools in the comments below. This episode is brought to you by Kaboomkin, the smaller, faster, funnier RPG of cartoon, fairy tale, post-apocalypse mayhem. It's time to blow stuff up. Get it now at www.kaboomkin.com. Thank you all for watching this episode. Hit like, subscribe, or ring the bell, or Booger will get you. If you want to see more videos like this, go to hopspush.com and buy an RPG or t-shirt. Do good, annoy evil, and bye-bye.